Hey everyone, and welcome back to Verisight Research. Today we're doing something a little special. We're diving deep into a comprehensive introduction to statistics and data analysis. This isn't your typical dry stats lecture. Instead, we're going to look at a unique case-based approach that teaches you how to actually do data analysis using real-world examples. The source material for today's deep dive is a book by Conrad Ziller called Introduction to Statistics and Data Analysis, a case-based approach. We're going to explore the 4 key areas of statistical data analysis, showing you how they apply to real problems. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap of the entire analytical process. The 4 pillars of data analysis: 1. Univariate Statistics; 2. Bivariate Statistics; 3. Statistical Inference; 4. Regression Analysis Part 1, Univariate Statistics, the Socio-Demographic Report. Let's start with the foundation, univariate statistics. This means analyzing one variable at a time. Think of it as getting to know your data. Our first case study looks at a socio-demographic report for the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. We're talking about data on unemployment, crime rates, population density, and average age across 53 different districts. So, how do we even begin to make sense of all this? We need to describe the data. First, you want to understand the data's structure. A great way to start is with a histogram. Look at these distributions. They instantly show us if we have outliers, if the data is symmetric or skewed, and where the center of our data lies. But histograms only give us a visual. To make it precise, we need numbers. We use what are called measures of central tendency. The most famous is the mean, or average. For instance, the average unemployment rate across these districts is around 7.4%. But the mean can be sensitive to outliers. That's why we also use the median, which is the exact middle value of your data. It's a more robust measure of a typical value. But describing a single value isn't enough. We also need to know how spread out the data is. How much variation is there? This is where measures of dispersion come in. The standard deviation tells you on average how far each data point is from the mean. A high standard deviation means more spread. And finally, we have position measures. Box plots are fantastic for this. They show you the median, the quartiles, and clearly highlight any outliers. This is incredibly useful for a quick snapshot of your data's distribution. This univariate analysis is the crucial first step. It helps you check for errors, understand your data's limits, and generate initial questions. For example, seeing a map of unemployment might prompt the question, why are some areas so different? This leads us to the next stage. Bivariate analysis. Part 2. Bivariate Statistics, the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Now we get into the juicy part, relationships. With bivariate statistics, we analyze how two variables are related to each other. Our case study here is the 2020 U.S. presidential election. We want to know what factors are associated with someone supporting Trump versus Biden. First, let's look at a simple question. Who supports Trump? Maybe education plays a role. What we're looking at here is a cross-tabulation. We're basically breaking down the data. Look at this. Among people with low formal education, 54.8% supported Trump. But among the highly educated, only 29.5% supported him. That's a huge difference. It suggests a relationship. For numeric variables like age, we can compare distributions using histograms or just plot the means. But for two numeric variables, we use a scatter plot and calculate the correlation. This scatter plot shows a clear pattern. As the share of highly educated people in a state increases, support for Trump decreases. That's a negative correlation. The correlation coefficient, Pearson's R, quantifies this. Here, it's minus 0.69, which is a strong negative relationship. We also need to see if the relationship is just by chance or statistically significant. For crosstabs, we use a chi-square test and a measure of association called Cramer's V. Part 3, Statistical Inference, Satisfaction with Government. Here's the big question. How do we know our findings from the survey are true for the entire population? We don't ask every single American who they're voting for. We use a sample. Statistical inference is the process of using data from a sample to make conclusions about the larger population. Our case study looks at a survey measuring satisfaction with the German government. The foundation of this is probability. We use concepts like the law of large numbers and the central limit theorem. These aren't just fancy theories. They tell us that if we take a large enough random sample, our sample mean will be very close to the true population mean. And if we took many samples, the distribution of those sample means would look like a bell curve, also known as a normal distribution. This normal distribution is our tool for uncertainty. It helps us build confidence intervals, which give us a range of plausible values for the population parameter. For example, we can say we are 95% confident that the true average government satisfaction in Germany is between 4.2 and 4.4 on a 0 to 10 scale. It's a measure of our precision. And then there's the null hypothesis testing. This is the classic p-value you always hear about. The idea is to prove something by contradiction. We start with the null hypothesis, which is usually that there is no effect or no difference. Then we check the probability of getting our sample results if the null hypothesis were true. If that probability is very low, usually below 5%, we reject the null hypothesis and say our result is statistically significant. Part 4, Regression Analysis. Attitudes toward justice. Finally, we move to the big leagues. Regression analysis. This is a powerful tool that allows us to answer the question, what is the effect of one variable on another while controlling for a bunch of other factors? The case here examines the relationship between income and attitudes towards social justice while also controlling for variables like gender, unemployment, and region. Let's start with bivariate regression, just one independent variable. Our model asks, does a higher income mean you are less likely to support social justice? The output tells us a few things. The regression coefficient is minus 0.018, and it's statistically significant. So we can say for every 1 unit increase in income category, support for justice decreases by 0.018 scale points on average. The R-squared is low at 0.016, meaning this one variable only explains 1.6% of the variation in justice attitudes. There must be more to the story. So, we add multiple regression. We add control variables like gender, whether someone was unemployed, and whether they live in East or West Germany. Now the story gets richer. The effective income gets slightly smaller, from minus 0.018 to minus 0.011, because some of its effect was just picking up the influence of gender and region. We can see that women, people who have been unemployed, and people living in East Germany all advocate for social justice more strongly than their counterparts. These coefficients are all statistically significant, but the real power of multiple regression isn't just about adding controls. It's about exploring complexity. For instance, what if the effect of income isn't a straight line? Sometimes relationships are nonlinear. We can add a squared term of income to model an inverted U-shape. We also explore interactions. What if the effect of being a woman on justice attitudes is different in East Germany than it is in West Germany?
This graph is incredible. It shows that while women in the West support justice more than men, the difference is small and not statistically significant in the East. This is the kind of detail you can only get with regression analysis and proper model building. Conclusion. Host on camera, so there you have it, a complete journey through the 4 pillars of statistical data analysis. We started by describing our data with univariate statistics, then explored simple relationships with bivariate stats. We used inference to understand the uncertainty in our findings and, finally, used regression to build complex models that account for multiple factors. The key takeaway is that data analysis is a step-by-step process, and starting with descriptive and visual approaches is just as important as the complex models. Thanks so much for watching Verisight Research. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And let us know in the comments, what part of this intro to data analysis are you most excited to try? See you in the next one.